Jai.
Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki.
Jai.
Ramsikaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadara Shiva Sati Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki.
Jai.
Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Gitter Govardhan ki.
Jai.
Mayapur Dham ki. Vrindavan Dham ki. Jamuna Devi ki. Ganga Devi ki. Tulsi Devi ki. Transcendental Book Distribution ki. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki.
Jai.
Premanande.
Hare Bol.
All glories the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories the assembled devotees.
Hare
All
Krishna.
glories to Shri Guru and Shri Karanga. Hare
Hare
Hare Bol.
Bol.
Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashita Deshatarane. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayana Namaskrita Naram Chaiva Narottama Devam Saraswatim Vyasyam Jachotayam Adiriyat Nastaprayashu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloki Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. So good morning, everyone, in person and online. So nice to see all of you. So today we are wrapping up a very wonderful and very complex chapter in the third canto. So I'm actually going to, there's two verses for today. I'm going to read the first one. This is the one we'll repeat together, and then I'll just go into the second one after we repeat this one. Dasotara. So we're on Srimad Bhagavatam today. We're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, third canto. For those of you who want to pull up on your phone, third canto, 11th chapter, text 41. Okay. So, Dashotara Dikayatra Pravista Paruman Vunuvat Lakshyate Natargatas Kanye Kotisho Hi Andarasya Dasotara Dikaryatra Pravista Paruman Vunat Parinanuvat Lakshate Natargatas Kanye Kotisho Hyanda Rashaya. Would someone else like to try it online?
Dasotar. You can do it.
Dasotaradhikar yatra pravishta paramanuvad lakshyaten targatas koti sohyanda rasahaya.
Okay. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna Mata. Dasotaradhikairiyatra pravishtaha paramanuvat lakshayate antargatas chanye kotisho hi andarasyaha. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Anyone in person? Now we have the verse up. Thank you, Sita. Go ahead. Dasotara Dikaryatra Pravista Parumanuvat Lakshate Natargatas Kanye Kotisyo Yanda Rasyaya. Hare Krishna. Anyone else? Dasotara Adhikara Ravista Paramanuvat Lakshyate Natergataskanya Kotisho Hyanda Rasaya. Anyone else? Online, anyone else like to chant?
Dasotaradhikaya yatra pravista
Dasotara Adhikara Yatra
pravista paramanuvat
Ravista Paramanuvat
lakshyate natargataschanye
Lakshyate Natargataskanye
kotisho hi andarasaya.
Kotisho Hyanda Rasaya. Okay, let's do word for word. Dasa Uttara Adhikai. With 10 times greater thickness. Yatra, in which. Pravista, entered. Parama Anuvat, like atoms. Lakshyate, it, the massive universes, appears. Antagata, come together. Cha, and. Anye, in the other. Kotisha, clustered. He, for. Andarashaya, combination of universes. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The layers or elements covering the universes are each 10 times thicker than the one before, and all the universes clustered together appear like atoms in a huge combination. Purport. The coverings of the universes are also constituted of the elements of earth, water, fire, air, and ether, and each is 10 times thicker than the one before. The first covering of the universe is earth, and it is 10 times thicker than the universe itself. If the universe is 4 billion miles in size, then the size of the earthly covering of the universe is 4 billion times 10. The covering of water is 10 times greater than the earthly covering. The covering of fire is 10 times greater than the water covering. The covering of air is 10 times greater than that of fire. The covering of ether is 10 times greater than that of air, and so on. The universe within the coverings of matter appear to be like an atom in comparison to the coverings, and the number of universes known even to those who can estimate the coverings of the universe. So I'm going to go on and read the last verse for today, and then we'll get into some discussion. Tad ahur aksharam brahma. Okay. Sarva karana karanam. Vishnur dhamma param shaktat. Purushaya Mahatmana. Tat, that. Ahu is said. Aksharam, infallible. Brahma, the supreme. Sarva Karana, all causes. Karanam, the supreme cause. Vishnu Dhamma, the supreme abode of Vishnu. Param, the supreme. Shakshat, without doubt. Purushaya, of the Purusha incarnation. Mahatmana, of the Mahavishnu. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is therefore said to be the original cause of all causes. Thus, the spiritual abode of Vishnu is eternal without a doubt, and it is also the abode of Mahavishnu, the origin of all manifestations. Lord Mahavishnu, who is resting in Yoga Nidra in the causal ocean and creating innumerable universes by his breathing process, only temporarily appears in the Mahatattva for the temporary manifestation of the material world. He is a plenary portion of Lord Sri Krishna, and thus, although he is non-different from Lord Krishna, his formal appearance in the material world as an incarnation is temporary. The original form of the personality of Godhead is actually the Svarup, or real form, and he eternally resides in the Vaikuntha world, Vishnu Loka. The word Mahatmana is used here to indicate Mahavishnu, and his real manifestation is Lord Krishna, who is also Parama, as confirmed in Brahma Samhita. Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachinanda Vigraha Anandir Adir Govinam Sarvakarana Karanam. The Supreme Lord is Krishna, the original personality of Godhead known as Govinda. His form is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge, and he is the original cause of all causes. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the third canto, 11th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Calculation of Time from the Atom. Om Jnana Tamaranjasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmanate Nina Tashme Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupakada Mayam Dadati Svadvatantikam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Swamanati Namane Snekta Chaitas Rupani Padmanam Trasaputam Prabhupada Gata Pranam Bhakti Charapadam. So we've had quite a ride with this chapter. It's very technical. It's been very intense, very challenging to understand. And I apologize for being the one to wrap it up for all of you, because there have been much more qualified speakers to talk about this over the last few weeks. But I'm going to do my best. This, like I said, it's a very beautiful chapter, because we've been learning about time and how it's estimated, how we measure it. But we've also been learning about the eternality of the Lord. So I'm going to take us through just a little, very brief point-by-point review, very quick review. I'm not going to go into the depth of the other sections. You can certainly watch replays of speakers that did an amazing job with ISKCON Philadelphia's YouTube channel of really getting into depth with some of those areas. But I just want to give us a quick, kind of overview of what we've looked at during this chapter, because it's been a lot. If any of you have been following along week to week has seen, this is a pretty intense subject. So what's really happening here? Vidur and Maitreya are in a conversation. They're in a very deep conversation, and Vidur is asking very sober, inquisitive questions. He wants to know about the manifestations of the Lord. He wants to understand creation. He wants to understand how he fits in, how we all fit in to all of this. So these are very sober questions. He's a very inquisitive devotee. And Maitreya, being his senior, is giving him very beautiful explanations. Maitreya is a very dear devotee of the Lord. So this is kind of setting the scene, kind of like in the beginning, we have the stages of Naimisharanya are asking these questions. They're very, very inquisitive, but they're very direct, but very sober questions, just as we are encouraged to do in our own path. We know that Prabhupada encouraged his disciples to ask questions, to be inquisitive, to learn, because that's how we better understand where we come from. It's like a child asking the mother, Mommy, where's the sun? Where's the moon? Where is this? Where's that? How did I get here? Why does this do that? Anybody who's been around children sees that they're so inquisitive by nature. And sometimes as an adult, we lose that. But we want to continue that inquisitive nature and asking very, like I said, sober questions, because these are the things that help bring us deeper in our understanding of our relationship with the Lord, and also in our understanding of this material energy and how it can really pull us in. So let's start with the atom. Okay, so we started off in this chapter of understanding or learning about, maybe not understanding, because I'm still trying to wrap my head around all of this. So I'm going to just give you the overview of understanding the atom and how it's measured in time. Okay, so really time is being measured by movement of an atom, or the space it takes up. So the movement atom through a ray of sunlight, the movement of atom. The atom is known as the smallest particle. Now, in the Bhagavatam, the atom is referred to as the smallest particle, but in the way we use the atom scientifically, we now know it's not the smallest particle. So we're going to understand atom in Bhagavatam to mean that which is the smallest, because atom really comes from the Greek word, which is defining the smallest possible particle that cannot be split. But so in a sense, scientists misnamed the atom a long time ago, because they realized, oops, actually, that we found something a bit smaller. So for the sake of discussion today, we're going to understand it that way. It's the smallest particle that can't be split. And so there's a lot of different calculations of how these atoms come together and they expand and grow, just like time. Can we see time expanding, right? And how we are measuring time. So we learned about the atom as in terms of a measurement of time and the space it takes up, the movement with that atom. We learned about the units of calculating human time compared to the life of Lord Brahma. The life of Lord Brahma, the lifetime of Brahma. So again, I'm not going to go into all of the breakdown of this lifespan, but these are some of the things that we understood. Now, why would we want to understand our lifespan to Lord Brahma? Well, it's the most calculable, right? If we try to understand our lifespan to Krishna, how can we calculate that? Because we know from this very last verse, Krishna is eternal. So how can we calculate something that's finite against something that's eternal? It's very difficult to do. So why are we calculating this lifespan as compared to Lord Brahma? Is because Lord Brahma actually has a lifespan. He still dies. He passes through different lifespans, just as humans do, but the lifespan of Lord Brahma is exponentially longer, right? But if you notice, if you've been following along a little bit, or maybe you've read in the different texts, that the 100-year lifespan is kind of this marker. We have 100 years of human life, 100 years in the life of Lord Brahma. So we see this 100-year span as kind of being a general marker, even though humans don't a lot of times hit that mark, although more and more people are due to medical advances. We tend to use that as a general marker. So now Vidura gets even more inquisitive, and he's like, well, what about the demigods? What about how's their lifespan measured? So then they go into a little bit of detail about the demigods. So we have after 1 day, and at the end of 1 day and 1 night is 4 yugas times 1,000. So this is kind of Brahma's day, 24 hours essentially. We have 4 yuga times 1,000. So we know that the total yuga cycles are about 4.3 million years in human years. So multiply that times 1,000. Okay, so now we're looking at billions. All right, so this is just one 24-hour day, but then Lord Brahma goes to sleep. He goes into, a sleep, and then there is actually a partial annihilation. So now we're talking about a lot of time passing here at this point. Okay, now, and then, so I'm just trying to build this story for you. So where did we start? We started with an atom, right? Measuring time as an atom and the movement and sunlight, through a ray of sun. We're now talking about the span of a human life to the span of Lord Brahma's life, which we're now already understanding that a human life of 100 earthly years, we can't even comprehend what that means, because it's not even measuring any kind of blink of an eye for Lord Brahma, because that's 4 billion years in one 24-hour span for him. Okay, so now we go on to learn that within the time of Lord Brahma, we have these manvantars, these days, these times of Manu. And there are 14 Manus in each day of Brahma. 14. And in each night, so in one half, so in each 14-hour, or in each 12-hour part of Lord Brahma's life, in each day and each night, there's 14 manvantars. And each lifespan of a Manu is 71 yuga cycles. So how many years are in a yuga cycle? Do you remember? About roughly 4.3 million. Okay, so now we're talking about the lifespan of one Manu is 71 yuga cycles, which is 71 times 4.3 million is roughly 306,720,000 years. Okay, so, and there's 14 of those in each day and 14 in each night. So it's now 28 in 24 hours. So now we're bringing it to that period of time. Okay, and each Manu is the ruler, is the progenitor of that time period. Okay, so we're hearing these words, we're hearing these, but to see it kind of placed in a linear sense, what this all means, how it all breaks down, I need spreadsheets. I'm a linear thinker. I need to kind of see things broken down like that. So I'm trying to do the same, hopefully at least simplify it for all of you, because I need that personally. So where are we now? Does anyone know what year we're in of Lord Brahma's lifetime? Anyone remember? How old's Lord Brahma right now?
51. 51st
51.
year.
He's 51. Me too.
51
Yay.
year.
So, but Lord Brahma's 51 is a little different than mine. So, but he is in the second half of the first day of this year. So he's 51 and a half a day old. So we don't have to do all the math there, but what do we remember about that half a day? That's a lot, right? We've got 14 manvantaras in that half, or actually 7 manvantaras in that half a day. So we're just kind of starting to get the sense of what this is all looking like. He's maybe like 53,000 years into his first day of life of his 51st year. So we got some math going on here. And so, like I said, what I mentioned is that when Lord Brahma goes to sleep, there's a partial devastation. And so in the Bhagavatam, it talks about this partial devastation is kind of things roll up and there's a dissolution. Living entities merge into this dissolution. And this can be really confusing because what's something that we understand about the spirit soul? It's always individual. So we don't lose that individuality. It just all kind of gets, right? And then it's, but there's a period of time when all of this is happening, it gets rolled up into this dissolution. And there's actually a significant chunk of time where everything's just, Brahma's sleeping and everything's just kind of, there's that nighttime. And things are just kind of in a very dark and nighttime space. And it describes it in the Bhagavatam that there's wind, there's fire, there's destruction from the mouth of Sankarshan. Okay, so there's a lot happening when Lord Brahma goes to sleep. When you go to sleep, do you have crazy dreams? Yeah, I know I do. So, but his sleep's a little different than our sleep. We're going into a slightly mode of ignorance. He's going into yoga nidra, which is a very, very different state. So, when he's awake, it's in a creative space. That yoga nidra is kind of a regenerative state. So now we know about the two halves. So we are starting to learn about the two halves of Lord Brahma, the paradas. Okay, the first 50 years, and the second 50 years. So we now know, because he's how old? 51, that we're in the second parada. And so now, again, we were starting to learn about, so you can see how everything's with Lord Brahma right now. We got a little bit of the sense of the demigods, but we're still comparing everything to the lifespan of Lord Brahma, because he's a creator. He's a creator of the universe. And so we're learning about that because it's important, because Lord Brahma is the creator of this universe. And so when his lifespan ends, as does all of this, because we are under this Lord Brahma. I believe we're under the four-headed Lord Brahma. Now there's different Lord Brahmas in different creations, and but this is the one that we're under. Okay, so we've got so now the first millennium. So we said about those like 4.3 million years is a yuga cycle, right? And then we have the 14 manvantaras, so 306 billion years, right? But the very first millennium of his lifespan, the very first millennium is called the Brahma. It's the Padma Kalpa. I'm sorry, the Brahma Kalpa. Okay, that's his birth. This is the Brahma Kalpa. It's the year of the 1,000 years of Brahma. And then after that, the second millennium is when the lotus flower grew out of Lord Vishnu's belly. So that is called the Padma Kalpa. So the first millennium in the second half of Lord Brahma's life is called the Varaha Kalpa, because this is when Lord Varaha appeared. Okay. So it is said that the two halves of Lord Brahma's life the two halves of Lord Brahma's life, right? Those are the paradas. So we're what, in the second parada, because he's 51. So the two halves of his life is equal to one nimesha. Now, we didn't get into all those terms from earlier. The class on nimesha is the one I gave earlier in this chapter, but one nimesha is actually just shy of a blink. Just shy of a blink, but not just our blink, because our blinks are slow. Just shy of a blink of Lord Vishnu.
Our blinks are long.
Right? So just shy of a blink. I can't even blink that fast. Right? Just shy of that is the duration of the two halves of Lord Brahma's life. It's just one less than a blink of the Supreme Lord. So this is pretty telling, because all these calculations I just gave about just one day of Brahma, and now we're talking about his entire lifespan is just a blink of the Lord, one blink. So we can't even comprehend. I mean, the numbers are so large even to understand Lord Brahma's life, but let alone to understand the eternality of the Lord. And this is the beautiful wrap up that we're given through this chapter. So we get so technical and into all these different terms, and we're learning all of these calculations and the lifespan of mostly focusing on Lord Brahma. And then we get to the end, kind of like the cherry on top. It's more than cherry, it's the cherry on top, but it's really the key message here. What's the key message? That this is all beyond our conception. We still, no matter how much we try and put numbers against it, the best we can do is put a number against the longest living entity that we can calculate, which is Lord Brahma, and it's still incalculable to understand Lord Krishna. And that is really what we're looking at here. We're looking at that eternality. And so I want to, kind of go in to say, like, this is actually pulled from another purport, and I'm going to read this for a minute. The great sage Maitreya has given a considerable description of the time of different dimensions, beginning from the atom up to the duration of the life of Brahma. Now he attempts to give some idea of the time of the unlimited personality of Godhead. He just gives a hint of his unlimited time by the standard of the life of Brahma. The entire duration of the life of Brahma is calculated to be less than a second of the Lord's time, less than a second, the blink of an eye. Eternal time is never lost along with the life of Brahma. It continues, but it has no ability to control the Supreme Lord. It's because the Lord is the controller of time. And this is what we know, that Kala is worshipable as the Lord. Kala is the form. The Lord is worshipable as time. The Lord controls everything. Time does not control the Lord. The Lord controls time. And so in the spiritual world where there is undoubtedly time, but it has no control over activities. Time is unlimited, and the spiritual world is also unlimited, since everything there exists on the absolute plane. So what the conclusion is that time is controlled by the Supreme. So, like I said, we've gotten very complex. Now, today's two verses actually add a new layer, especially the verse 41. It adds another layer to all of this understanding by getting into the size of the material universe. So now we were talking about this whole chapter, we've been talking about time. And now we're going to talk about the size very briefly. It just brings it in at the end, just to completely blow our minds even more, as if our minds aren't blown enough. We have to understand that the material universe is 4 billion miles in diameter, from a combination of 8 material elements: earth, water, fire, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. So these chapters, the chapter from, this verse 41, text 41 today, it's really just giving us a snapshot. These different coverings, they're talking about the material coverings. Okay, the material coverings and the thickness of these coverings. So as it gets closer to Earth, the thickness it increases. We're materially covered here. There's more and more layers. So it says the first covering of the universe is Earth and is 10 times thicker than the universe itself. So again, these are material coverings. So as we get closer, the material energies get thicker, they get heavier. It's hard to, it's really hard to wrap our heads around, but we are deeply immersed in material energies here because we are on Earth, planet Earth. And so the covering of water is 10 times greater than the earthly covering. The covering of fire is 10 times greater than the watery covering. The universe within the coverings of matter appears to be like an atom in comparison to the coverings, and the number of universes is unknown even to those who can estimate the coverings of the universe. So again, this is coming down through the parampara, these understandings of how to estimate time, how to estimate the size of the universe, because science hasn't gotten there and may never. Maybe they're close. Maybe their calculations are getting closer. But that today's verse 41, kind of taps on that very quickly. Just one quick verse to understand the material coverings. And then we get to the grand finale of the absolute, the eternal nature, the absolute supremacy of the Lord. And I wanted to, the Brahma Samhita verse, this is one of the invocations, this is the invocation to the Brahma Samhita as we know it. There's other, this is the Brahma Samhita verse 5.1 that we have. The Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachinanda Vigraha Anandir Gadir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. And so I'm going to read this again. Krishna, who is known as Govinda as the supreme Godhead, he has an eternal blissful spiritual body. He is the origin of all. He is no other origin, and he is the prime cause of all causes. And Prabhupada brought this verse into today's purport to really demonstrate that he is an eternal name, an eternal form, eternal attribution, and eternal pastimes. Okay, and so then I wanted to share the 14th mantra from Sri Ishopanishad, just to kind of continue this discussion and provide more evidence. Like, we need more evidence that Krishna is supreme, Krishna is eternal. But this from Sri Ishopanishad mantra 14, it's Sambhutim cha vinisham cha tadya vedo bayam saha vinishena mrityam tirva sambhuyantram ashnute. And the translation is, one should know perfectly the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna and his transcendental name, form, qualities, and pastimes, as well as the temporary material creation with its temporary demigods, men and animals. When one knows these, he surpasses death and the ephemeral cosmic manifestation with it, and in the eternal kingdom of God, he enjoys eternal life of bliss and knowledge. Doesn't that just, I mean, that's it. It just says it all. It really encapsulates this chapter. Because what we've been learning is that he's saying the things that we've been studying in this chapter, it says right here in this 14th mantra, if we understand these things, we learn them. One who knows perfectly the personality of Godhead and his transcendental name, forms, qualities, and pastimes, as well as the temporary material creation with its temporary demigods, men and animals. Lord Brahma is temporary. The humans, the living entities are temporary. The demigods, it's all temporary, except the Lord, who is eternal. And with this knowledge, he surpasses death. He doesn't surpass physical death. He doesn't surpass material death. He surpasses the death. He comes back. He comes back he does not come back. He goes home to Godhead. And from there, he never experiences death again. And this is what we all as devotees, right? We talk about this. We talk about going back home, going back to Godhead. Why? Why is this something that we discuss so often? Why don't we want to come back here? Well, because when we're coming back into this material energies, we're now subject to all of the things that we experience, the modes of material nature, the suffering. We experience the cycle of birth and death over and over and over again. And the only way to escape that The only way to escape that is to develop a relationship and to develop an understanding with the Lord. Now, getting this to perfectly understand something is very difficult. So I am nowhere near that any kind of understanding there. So I know that I have to do other things because I'm going to still try really hard to understand these things as best as I can, as given through the Parampara, as studied through Shastra. However, because I am flawed as a human being, because I have the imperfections of that material entity, I know that I also need to follow some other things. And then maybe Krishna's causeless mercy will scoop me up. And the causeless mercy means that even though I'm sitting here flawed in these material energies with a low fund of knowledge of much of anything that's relevant to Krishna, Krishna might say, they're trying. You know, I'm going to give just a little splash of my mercy and see what they do with it. And we may experience those types of things in our lives every day. We might see them as miracles. We might see them as a moment of connection where we think, you know, I really felt something today. I really felt something in my chanting that I felt connected. Maybe we read a verse and it just really grabs us for that moment. That's Krishna's showing mercy in that moment. He's allowing our hearts to connect. He's allowing our hearts to connect to him. And the one thing about our hearts, and this is something I've been meditating a lot on lately, is my own heart and how I can nurture it more. So because if our hearts are nurtured, if we take good care of our hearts, we give it the nourishment and the attention that our hearts need, then our hearts can connect to Krishna. Because when our hearts become neglected, you know, we put our hearts over here so that we can function out here. You know, then we are putting our hearts over here and forgetting that our hearts are the connection point to God, to Krishna in that relationship. So bhakti is love. And where do we experience that is through our heart connection. We need the intellectual side, right? We need the gyan. We can't go without, but the heart is essential. That is the bhakti, the heart and the head have to be connected. So we have to figure out a way to nourish the heart. So what do we do? So again, like we said, to know perfectly the personality of Sri Godhead, his transcendental names, forms, qualities, and pastimes, it's a little challenging to know that perfectly. But we study, we bring in the gyan. We do that through coming to class, through reading Shastra, talking, you know, listening to classes of others. And through the heart, we cultivate the heart through our daily, you know, sadhana. Because the sadhana is what helps us keep the heart connected, or maybe helps connect the heart. We chant japa, we pray, we have confidential conversations. We share in confidence with other devotees, and this is something that can be really important for the cultivation of that relationship, is to share confidentially with someone that we trust in order to share a difficulty, to share something we're going through in life, because that's part of taking care of the heart, of taking care of that relationship. And that is also part of how we can know Krishna better, because the more our hearts are open to Krishna, the more that he can enter. As super soul is sitting next to soul. We have Atma and Paramatma sitting right next to each other. But if the Atma is too covered over, if the Atma is just, you know, sectioned off, the Paramatma can only do, you know, is not going to, you know, grab the living entity and be like, shake us from inside. Sometimes it may, but we have to want that. We have to want to have that connection. And it's the soul and the super soul are seated where? In our hearts, right? As it, you know, it says the Paramatma is seated in one's heart as if in a vehicle, right? It says right there in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna told us that. Krishna told us he's in his heart, in our hearts, each one of our hearts. So this is the care and the attention. And Prabhupada gives an example of the bird cage and the bird. And if we put the bird in the cage, it's kind of like what we might sometimes do to that relationship or to our hearts. We put the bird in the cage, We shine the cage up really nicely, but we don't feed the bird. We don't give the bird water. We don't give the bird love and attention. The bird will die, but we'll have a nice shiny cage. We want to make sure that we're taking care of the bird in the cage and taking care of the cage. So we need both. And so today's verse is just a beautiful reminder of how great the Lord is. How he's eternal, he's full of bliss, he's full of knowledge. He's the original cause of all causes. And that's all we really need to know in the scheme of this. But because we are inquisitive, because we are like small children wanting to ask questions all the time, we need to know these other things. We want to know, we want to try and understand. It gives us context. But is it essential for our relationship with Krishna? What's really essential is just knowing him directly, understanding where we come from, but we need to just develop that relationship in our hearts. And so this whole chapter, what did it do? It brought us through a very complex topic just to deliver the final lesson, which is so often given to us in so many different ways, of Krishna, of Vishnu. And that's really it. That is really it. So as we think about our own time, and because this chapter has been about time, we'll leave it with today's thoughts. And maybe this is an exercise we can do. How are we spending our time? What are things that can nourish us, that anchor us in our bhakti, not pull us away? What are the things, and I use myself as an example because I know myself best, but I've been really thinking about this a lot. Like, what am I needing personally to feel stronger in my heart, to feel more love in my heart for God, for Krishna? For me, it's better japa, it's writing. Writing is critical for me. And actually, I was listening to a Keshava Swami lecture the other day, and he was saying, 15, you have to have an hour. You have an hour. And he was talking to a general audience, right? He said, if you have an hour of time in the morning, if you can get up early in the morning, you have an hour of time, and you can take 25% of that and dedicate it to some sort of meditation. Take 25% of that and dedicate it toward moving your body around. 25% of that for some sort of reading, and 25% of that for reflection. Do we give ourselves reflection time? Do we write? Do we sit quietly in a space or in nature to really reflect on our relationship? Do we really reflect on our own hearts and reflect on what we want in our Krishna consciousness and how we want to engage with the Lord? So that reflection time is so, so critical. Because, and like I said, I love how Keshava Swami, he broke it up into quarters, but I love how he took that as really, it's so essential. We need reflection time as part of our sadhana so that we can really absorb and come to an understanding. We want to integrate, because we know that too much gyan isn't good. Too much heart isn't good. We need to be able to integrate, and that reflection time integrates us. So I really want to just put this out to all of us collectively to really, for the next week, look at our time. Really look at it. Maybe we use a journal and we write down how we're spending the time in our day. Maybe we use a time tracker on our phone, whatever it takes, to understand how we're spending our time and whether we're giving ourselves everything that we need in our bhakti to really cultivate that understanding of the Lord and the understanding of our relationship with the Lord. So I'm going to stop here. It's 8:45. So I'm going to stop here and invite any questions, clarifications, corrections, because there's plenty of room for that one, and any other reflections or comments. So, yes, Andrew.
Yes, so all the calculations that are in the Srimad Bhagavatam have been proven by science. how could the people, how could our forefathers have known this unless there's more powers than we can possibly imagine. But all of these calculations are all proven to how many billions of years was the first day, the second day of creation. This is all, it's all been proven. So
Yeah.
So there it is.
Yep.
Even scientifically cross-checked.
Yeah.
That the timing and calculations are perfect.
Yeah, yeah. So Dr. Andrew was sharing that, you know, a lot of these calculations have been proven in modern science. And how's that possible? And that's because, you know, Krishna, this is all coming down from Krishna. So if we look at this as a parampara, this is, you know, coming down from the Lord. The Lord knows everything. He made it. It's, you know, so the scientists are trying to figure it out through mechanical instruments and material instruments and their material minds. And they're getting to some of it. They still haven't cracked the code on a lot of it, but they're getting to some of it, you know, but the Bhagavatam has it there already because it's come from the source. You know, it's like, you know, if you made up a recipe for a cake, you can recite it off the top of your head. Whereas you hand someone a cake that's your own custom recipe and you hand it to them, and then they're going to start trying to figure out how you made the cake. They're going to be like putting it under a microscope and tasting it and really trying to dissect all the ingredients. But you're the creator. You already know these things. So and you can write them down in a book and then share them with generations to come. And that's essentially a simplified, you know, example of what we have here with the Srimad Bhagavatam. Is we have all of these things. And, you know, I mentioned in my last class about this is the Surya Siddhanta is another ancient text that scientists have been matching up against to show that these calculations in the Surya Siddhanta are actually spot on accurate. So again, these are all spiritual texts that are coming down. So any other questions? Yeah, Eileen.
You actually answered the question that I was going to ask right at the end there, which was, you know, we see the world pretty much through material eyes, right? I think consciousness is really bringing us to try to look at the world with spiritual eyes. And I think Canto 3 really does a really good job to say, like, your material eyes basically, they can't comprehend anything, they're not seeing really what's there, and their spiritual eyes, you know, maybe might even have like a concept, but still don't have like the capacity to do it. And my question was going to be, how do we like put our spiritual eyes on more? Like, how do we, you know, and I think that comment about reflection for me personally is kind of that missing piece. That like we go through our sadhana, we go for our chanting, we take darshan, but you know, how do we really integrate that to really truly see with spiritual eyes? And I think that reflection piece is the kind of, I think for me at least, the answer to that question.
Yeah. So Eileen was saying that, you know, we have these material eyes and that this third canto is really showing us the material aspects of our senses, and how do we get a more spiritual perspective. And, you know, the true divya chakshu, which is spiritual vision, can only be given by the Lord. So we understand that because Arjuna had to be given that divya chakshu, that spiritual vision. So we have to understand that true spiritual vision can only come from the mercy of the Lord. However, to see things more in a more spiritual sense, to see things from the spiritual lens in our own lives and to feel that relationship, that is, I agree. I mean, reflection can be a huge aspect, you know, and the more that we start to really work on our anarthas and work on our attachments and the things that can kind of distort our vision. You know, we all as humans have different distortions that can come into play due to past lives, due to current lives, and our conditioning. So it's, you know, through the reflection and through the, you know, self-work and the, you know, prayer, the sadhana, those distortions and coverings can also help. The more that those go away, the more we can more clearly see the spiritual perspective. And I think that that's really the goal, is to see things from a spiritual lens. Absolutely. Does that help? Okay. Great. Any other questions online? I know today's a holiday weekend, so we've got a small class. So I won't hold you up from your holiday weekend plans, but any other questions online? Okay.
I got from this class, Krishna controls the time. We
Yes.
are controlled by time.
Yes.
That's what I got. It's very interesting.
So
He controls
true.
everything.
So true. Great. Well, thank you all for coming.
Thank
I
you
hope you
very
have a
much.
lovely holiday weekend. And we'll see you soon. Vanchakalpa, Tarubhyascha,
Sarvachakapa
Kripa Sindhu,
Sindhubhyo
Vaibhya Cha,
Patita
Patitanam, Pavanebhyo.
Pavane.